Welcome to 7 Days Report, your reliable source of information from all major news from around the world. I'm your host, Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsilogiannis. Every weekend at 12 and 21, we bring you the latest headlines, in-depth analysis, and insightful commentary on the stories that matter most. Whether you're tuning in for a recap of the week or looking for a deeper understanding of global events, we've got you covered. Let's start with our first news. In a historic and unprecedented political development, Syria's president, once a prominent jihadist leader, made a high-profile visit to the White House this week. The meeting marks the culmination of an extraordinary personal and political transformation that has shocked international observers and altered regional dynamics. The Syrian president's early years were marked by militant involvement in jihadist movements during the tumultuous aftermath of Syria's civil war. However, over the past decade, he gradually transitioned from armed insurgency to formal political leadership. His rise to the presidency was initially met with widespread skepticism both domestically and internationally. Despite the controversy surrounding his past, the president has pursued a pragmatic approach to governance, focusing on rebuilding Syria's fractured institutions and infrastructure. His willingness to engage openly with Western powers represents a significant shift from his previous ideology and rhetoric. The White House visit symbolizes a new chapter in U.S.-Syria relations, emphasizing diplomacy and potential cooperation on regional security challenges, including counterterrorism and refugee resettlement. Senior U.S. officials highlighted the president's commitment to peace and stability during their joint statements. Critics remain cautious, questioning the sincerity of the president's transformation and warning of possible risks. Nevertheless, the Syrian leader insists that his past informs his dedication to preventing further conflict and fostering national reconciliation. This remarkable journey, from armed jihadist leader to recognized head of state welcomed at the White House, cements his place as one of the most controversial yet transformative figures in Middle Eastern politics today. Ukraine's justice minister has been suspended as part of an extensive investigation into corruption within the country's critical energy sector, Prime Minister Alexander Kovalenko announced this past week. The suspension marks a significant escalation in the government's crackdown on corruption, which has plagued Ukraine for years and hindered efforts at reform and investment. The justice minister, whose name has not yet been officially disclosed, is under scrutiny for alleged involvement in corrupt practices linked to irregularities in energy contracts and licensing. The probe is part of a wider inquiry targeting senior officials and business figures suspected of abusing their positions for personal gain in Ukraine's energy markets, a sector vital to national security and economic stability. Prime Minister Kovalenko emphasized the government's commitment to transparency and accountability, stating, "No official, regardless of rank, is above the law. We will continue to root out corruption wherever it is found to protect Ukraine's integrity and people." Ukraine's energy sector has long been marred by allegations of fraud and nepotism, and international partners have urged Kyiv to take stronger measures to combat graft. This latest development is seen as a decisive move to restore confidence among investors and the public. The Justice Minister's suspension is temporary while investigators collect evidence and conduct interviews. The government has pledged full cooperation with anti-corruption agencies and vowed to strengthen institutional oversight to prevent future abuses. This case highlights ongoing challenges Ukraine faces in reforming its political and economic systems amid external pressures and internal calls for change. Further updates are expected as the investigation progresses. President Donald Trump has declared he feels an obligation to sue the BBC after the broadcaster aired an edited version of one of his speeches. The controversy centers around accusations that the BBC manipulated footage in a way that distorted the message of Trump's remarks. Speaking at a press conference, Trump criticized the BBC's coverage, alleging that the network deliberately altered the context to misrepresent his statements. He emphasized his commitment to protecting his reputation and stated that pursuing legal action was necessary. "I have an obligation to set the record straight," Trump said, underscoring his belief that the edited broadcast was both unfair and damaging. The speech in question had been aired during a BBC political program where Trump discussed key policy initiatives and responded to critics. However, the edited footage reportedly cut out critical portions of his comments, shifting the narrative unexpectedly. Trump's team claims this editing gave viewers a misleading impression of his views. The BBC responded by defending its editorial standards, insisting the footage was edited in line with standard journalistic practices and was not intended to distort the message. The broadcaster highlighted its commitment to impartiality and said it welcomes open dialogue regarding its content. Legal experts say such lawsuits involving media outlets and public figures often focus on proving intentional defamation or misrepresentation, which can be challenging. This case could set a significant precedent regarding the limits of editorial freedom and political accountability in the media. As the situation develops, both sides remain firm, with Trump's legal team preparing to proceed and the BBC standing by its reporting. Saudi Arabia is signaling a new phase in its economic relationship with Lebanon, aiming to bolster commercial ties after recent successful efforts to curb drug smuggling, a senior Saudi official announced. The official, speaking during a regional security and trade conference in Riyadh, emphasized the kingdom's commitment to supporting Lebanon's economic stability and enhancing cooperation. Our recent measures against illicit drug trafficking underscore our resolve to create a safer, more transparent trade environment, the official said. This will pave the way for deeper commercial partnerships that benefit both nations. Drug smuggling has long hampered trade routes between the two countries, affecting security and economic growth. Saudi Arabia's intensified crackdown, which included enhanced border controls and intelligence sharing, has led to a significant reduction in narcotics transit. This success has opened the door to renewed dialogue on trade and investment. Lebanese officials welcomed the move, expressing optimism about expanding bilateral cooperation in sectors such as energy, agriculture, and infrastructure. Both sides have agreed to explore joint ventures and facilitate trade flows by easing regulatory barriers. Economic analysts note that Saudi Arabia's initiative comes at a time when Lebanon seeks to stabilize its economy amidst ongoing challenges. Strengthened commercial ties with a regional powerhouse like Saudi Arabia can provide critical support. This development marks a promising shift toward regional collaboration anchored in security and economic prosperity, highlighting Saudi Arabia's role as a key partner in Lebanon's future growth. The United States has intensified its diplomatic efforts at the United Nations Security Council to secure backing for its Gaza humanitarian plan amid escalating tensions and worsening conditions in the region. The U.S. mission to the UN warned that Palestinians could face grave consequences if the Security Council fails to endorse the proposed measures promptly. The plan, which aims to facilitate urgent humanitarian aid and establish a ceasefire framework, has encountered resistance from Russia, which offered a countertext emphasizing a different approach to conflict resolution. Moscow's proposal calls for unimpeded humanitarian access without preconditions and stresses political dialogue between all parties involved. U.S. diplomats contend the Security Council's swift support is crucial to prevent further civilian suffering in Gaza, where shortages of food, water, and medical supplies have reached critical levels. The United States is urging member states to put aside geopolitical divisions and prioritize humanitarian concerns. Russia's alternative text, however, reflects ongoing geopolitical friction within the Council, revealing deep-seated differences over how to address the conflict and the role of international actors. This divide threatens to delay unified action as the situation on the ground deteriorates. UN officials have expressed alarm at the growing humanitarian crisis and called for immediate, coordinated efforts to deliver assistance. The Security Council faces mounting pressure to reconcile competing drafts and achieve consensus, highlighting the complexities of global diplomacy in resolving the Gaza crisis. As negotiations continue, the international community watches closely, hoping for a breakthrough that could alleviate the suffering of civilians caught amid violent conflict. China's envoy to Seoul has publicly expressed concern over the strategic purpose behind the Korea-United States alliance, signaling Beijing's increasing unease about the deepening military and security ties between South Korea and the United States. In recent remarks, the Chinese ambassador emphasized that while China respects South Korea's sovereignty, The Seoul-Washington partnership appears to be shifting from a defensive alliance to a broader strategic tool aimed at countering China's influence in the region. The ambassador cautioned that such a move could destabilize the regional balance of power and derail efforts for lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. The comments come amid growing cooperation between South Korea and the United States, including joint military drills and expanded security agreements, which China sees as part of a broader United States strategy to contain its rise. Beijing has warned Seoul against becoming a pawn in this geopolitical contest, urging Seoul to maintain neutrality and avoid actions that might exacerbate tensions with China. Seoul, for its part, has consistently maintained that its alliance with Washington is centered on defending against North Korea's nuclear threats and ensuring regional stability. South Korean officials stress that their security relationship does not target any third country, but serves their national interests and regional peace. Analysts note that China's remarks reflect Beijing's discomfort with South Korea's balancing act between the United States and China amid increasingly complex global security dynamics. The coming months will be pivotal as Seoul navigates this delicate geopolitical landscape while addressing its own security challenges.
That was your news for now. I'm your host Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsilogiannis. Stay with us for a complete coverage of the news around the world. Goodbye.